The star-nosed mole. Somewhere in your county, probably within a couple hours of where you're sitting, there's a small wet animal living in the soil that processes the world faster than your nervous system can keep up with. You've almost certainly never seen one, because it lives in damp ground across the eastern US and Canada, and it spends most of its life underground. But you'd recognize it instantly, because the front of its face looks like someone glued a pink starfish to a hamster's face and called it a day. 22 pink, fleshy tentacles, ringing the snout in a perfect ring. The technical name for them is Eimer's organs, and there are roughly 25,000 of them packed into that tiny star. And here's the thing, they're not for smelling, they're for feeling. The mole is functionally blind, and it uses that star like a high frame rate hand. It presses the star against the soil, and a chunk of brain bigger than the part you use for your fingers processes everything it touches. Most people who hear about the nose assume those tentacles are sniffing the air. They're not. They're scanning, like fingertips on overdrive. And here's where it gets wild. A human nervous system reacts to a hot stove in around 150 milliseconds. A professional baseball player swings at a fastball in about 150 milliseconds. The star-nosed mole identifies, decides on, and consumes prey in roughly 8 milliseconds. That's the fastest forager ever recorded. The whole face is essentially a fingertip pretending to be a nose. Nature didn't sit down to draw something funny. It sat down to draw something that works. The fact that the result keeps landing like a joke is just a side effect. Somewhere in your county, a small wet mammal with a starfish nose is outthinking your phone. The Proboscis monkey. Across the Pacific, on the single island of Borneo, there's a primate whose nose is so large, the male has to physically push it out of the way before he can eat. The technical name is Nassalis larvatus, and it lives in the mangrove forests along the coast. Males grow a bulbous, drooping nose that can reach 4 inches long, sometimes hanging past the mouth. Females have small, upturned noses, no bigger than a regular monkey's. The males live in harems, one male plus several females and their offspring, and they spend their days eating unripe fruit and leaves. They're the only primate on Earth that digests that diet through ruminant-style stomach fermentation, basically running a 4-chambered cow gut on a monkey body. So why the nose? Despite the looks, it's not a deformity, it's not a tumor, it's not a cosmetic accident. It's a working amplifier. The bigger the nose, the deeper the resonating chamber. The deeper the chamber, the louder and lower the male's honk call. And females consistently choose the loudest, deepest males. A human male's voice deepens during puberty by about 1 octave, driven by larynx growth. A howler monkey's roar carries roughly 3 miles through dense forest. A male proboscis monkey with a fully developed nose can be heard from across an entire river system. And his call literally can't exist without that nose. Cut the nose, you cut the call. Picture the daily inconvenience of this. The male spends a non-trivial portion of his day moving his own nose out of the way to eat. Just to bite an unripe fruit, he has to lift the equipment. Bigger nose, bigger resonating chamber, bigger sound, more females. The biology is selecting for an upgrade to the broadcast system, and the cost is a face that requires constant maintenance. Worth noting, proboscis monkeys are endangered, mostly from habitat loss in Borneo's mangroves. Somewhere in Borneo, a monkey is honking through what is essentially a built-in subwoofer, and it's working. The Bald Uakari. Down in the western Amazon, in the flooded forests of Brazil, Peru, and Colombia, there's a monkey whose entire face acts like a credit score. The brighter, the better. The Bald Uakari has an almost completely bald scalp and face, and the skin underneath ranges from pale pink to fire engine red. Bright red faces are healthy. Pale faces are sick, parasitized, or stressed. And both males and females use this signal during mate selection. The redder the face, the better the mate. Here's the mechanism. The bald face is a transparency feature. With no fur in the way, blood flow under thin facial skin reads instantly. Healthier circulation, redder face. Compromised health, paler face. The selection pressure favored the most readable display, which kept stripping away fur until none was left. It's another one of those design choices that looks like a joke. Strip the fur, expose the plumbing. Let the animal advertise. The face isn't a flaw, it's the user interface. Tourists who first see one in the Amazon often assume the animal is sunburned, sick, or injured. The common version of this is wrong. A red face is the species at its absolute healthiest. A human cheek flushes by maybe one shade when embarrassed. A peacock signals fitness through tail feathers grown over months. The Bald Uakari signals fitness through a face that updates in near real time, like a status bar wired to the bloodstream. The whole thing looks like a monkey that walked into the wrong bachelor party and never quite recovered, but it's biology refusing to be subtle. Face color is a literal, real-time health metric, and the species runs on it. In the Amazon, you don't need a checkup, you need a mirror. If you've ever wanted to know why an animal looks the way it does, that's the kind of thing I cover here regularly. I post new animal deep dives like this all the time. Subscribing really helps. Thanks. The Wombat. Down in Australia, in the eucalyptus woodlands of the southeast and across Tasmania, there's a marsupial that looks like a fluffy potato and is actually built like a piece of construction equipment. The common wombat. It's a burrowing herbivore. It digs tunnel systems up to 100 feet long, and it has a cartilage plate built into its rear that functions as armor. If a predator chases a wombat into its burrow and tries to bite from behind, the wombat takes the bite on the cartilage and the predator deals with the dental damage. But here's what the wombat is actually famous for. It's the only animal on Earth, the only one, that produces cube-shaped poop. Between 80 and 100 faceted geometric pellets per day. The mechanism for this was finally identified in 2021. Specific elastic regions in the wombat's intestine contract irregularly during the final phase of digestion, gradually shaping the contents into faceted blocks before they ever exit the body. Most people assume the cubes must be molded at the exit point, like a square mold. Turns out the shape forms much earlier, deep in the intestine, through uneven muscle stiffness along the gut wall. So why bother? The current research points to the cubes serving a stacking function. Wombats use scat to mark territory on logs and rocks. Round droppings roll off. Cubes stay put. The geometry isn't decorative, it's signage that doesn't blow away. A human intestine is a smooth tube optimized for not getting stuck. A cow's digestive tract is 4 chambers optimized for fermenting grass. A wombat's intestine is a cube extruder. And honestly, the predator defense strategy is its own kind of dark comedy. Get bitten on the armored backside and let the predator figure out what just happened to its teeth. Australia's most polite mammal has a backside that doubles as a billboard, and the billboards are square. The Edible Dormouse. Over in Central and Southern Europe, in the oak woodlands and hazel forests and a worrying number of attics, there's a small mammal whose entire life strategy is to be unconscious for as long as possible. The Edible Dormouse. Gliss gliss. About 6 inches long, not counting the bushy tail. Found across France, Italy, Germany, the Balkans, and as an introduced species in parts of the UK. And it spends roughly 11 months of every year asleep. Hibernation runs from October to June, sometimes longer. In a really bad year, individuals have been documented sleeping for nearly 12 continuous months. Body temperature drops to just above freezing. Heart rate slows to a few beats per minute. The whole animal becomes a furry, breathing rock that snores audibly. Most people assume a sleeping animal is just resting. The dormouse isn't resting. It's metabolically suspended, closer to off than asleep. Pick one up during hibernation and it's cold, stiff, and makes no response. Early naturalists who tried it reported genuinely thinking the animal had died. So why sleep through almost the entire year? The strategy is a bet on tree mast cycles. Oak and beech trees produce massive nut crops only every few years, in what biologists call mast years. In a low mast year, hibernating longer is metabolically cheaper than trying to forage on whatever scraps are left. The dormouse simply waits the bad year out. The dormouse's life strategy is to skip the year. Just opt out. A human sleeps roughly 8 hours a day, totaling about a third of life. A bear hibernates for about 4 months. An edible dormouse spends roughly 90% of its adult life unconscious. It's functionally the napping champion of the European Union. Somewhere in an Italian attic, a small furry animal is currently asleep, snoring, and has been since last autumn. It will wake up around the time you renew your passport. When the year goes bad, sometimes the answer is to sleep through it and check back when the trees are paying again. The Shoebill Stork. In the swamps of central tropical Africa, in South Sudan and Uganda and Zambia, there is a 5-foot bird that has launched 1,000 memes by doing nothing at all. The shoebill. Balaniceps rex. Stands 4 to 5 feet tall. Wingspan of about 8 feet. Beak the size and shape of a dress shoe, hooked at the tip, with edges sharp enough to cut a fish in half. And what it does, more than anything else, is stand still. The shoebill can hold a hunting pose for over an hour, completely motionless, eyes locked on the water surface, not blinking. The hunting strategy is built around one moment. Lungfish surface to gulp air. The shoebill's job is to be there when they do, and to be the last thing they ever see. When the strike comes, the bird collapses forward with its full body weight, using the beak like a guillotine. It's not really a peck, it's a controlled fall onto whatever just made the mistake of breathing. Most people who first see a shoebill assume it's aggressive, ill-tempered, or hostile to humans. It isn't. The stare is hunting concentration. The few humans who get close, generally researchers and rangers, describe the bird as eerily calm, almost gentle. It's another one of those design choices that looks like a joke. Build a bird that stares like furniture and strikes like a trapdoor. The face is funny only if you don't know what it's for. A human can stand still for maybe a few minutes before discomfort. A heron will hold a hunting pose for about 30 minutes. A shoebill will hold a hunting pose for over an hour. And when the strike comes, it's a controlled fall, not a peck. The hunting style is to be the worst surprise of a fish's day, in extreme slow motion. The shoebill has been doing the same impression of garden statuary for 10 million years, and the lungfish keep falling for it. The Adelie Penguin. Down at the bottom of the world, on the Antarctic coast, there's a 2.5-foot bird running what is functionally an organized real estate market. The Adelie Penguin. Pygocellus adeliae. And every breeding season, 500,000 of them gather in colonies and start fighting each other over rocks, specifically pebbles. Adelies lay their eggs on rocky ground because eggs sitting on bare ice would freeze. They build raised nest platforms out of pebbles so the meltwater drains away from the egg, and pebbles in Antarctica are scarce, so the colony fights over them constantly. What happens next is documented behavior, not anecdote. Male adelies present pebbles to females as courtship gifts. Females accept pebbles in exchange for mating. Females have been observed sneaking off to neighboring males, mating with them in trade for additional pebbles, and then bringing those pebbles back to their primary mate. And the entire colony spends afternoons stealing rocks from each other, one pebble at a time, often from nests just a few feet away. The pebble matters because the egg matters. A nest that drains is an egg that hatches. A nest that floods is an egg that dies. The behavior looks like comedy, but it's a rational response to one of the harshest breeding environments on the planet. The pebble theft is sometimes dismissed as anecdote or misinterpretation. Turns out, it's been documented for over a century. The original observations go back to a 1911 Antarctic expedition that initially refused to publish them because the behavior was considered too embarrassing to print. A magpie will sometimes pick up shiny objects. A bowerbird will spend weeks decorating a stage to attract a mate. An Adelie Penguin colony will spend the entire breeding season running an organized stone economy with theft, exchange, and infidelity. The colony has reinvented theft, infidelity, and tax-free real estate, and they did it without lawyers. Antarctica has the most ruthless real estate market on Earth, and the property is rocks. Comedy and survival, it turns out, run on the same circuit. The Dumbo Octopus. Now, here's the thing. The funniest animal on Earth doesn't actually live on a continent at all. It lives below all of them. In the deep ocean, between 3,000 and 13,000 feet down, In some of the darkest, coldest water on the planet, there's an octopus, the Dumbo Octopus. The genus is Grimpoteuthis, and there are several species in it. They grow to about 8 to 12 inches typically. They eat small worms, crustaceans, and bivalves they find on the seafloor. And they have two large, fin-like flaps sitting above the eyes, which they use to swim by gently flapping. A lot of viewers assume Pixar invented the look. They didn't. Marine biologists had been documenting Grimpoteuthis for decades before Finding Nemo released in 2003. The character Pearl, the little pink octopus from that movie, was based directly on this real animal. The cartoon is the impression. The octopus is the original. So why the ear flaps? At those depths, there's almost no food and almost no predators, so energy efficiency wins over speed. Ear flapping is slow, smooth, and burns very little energy. The shape that looks like a child's drawing turns out to be the optimal solution for moving slowly through near-zero resource cold water. Imagine an octopus, then add Disney. A typical shallow water octopus jets through water using siphon-driven propulsion, like a soft rocket. A reef octopus crawls along coral with 8 independent arms. A Dumbo octopus, in absolute darkness 3 miles down, just gently flaps its ears and floats. And here's the thing. Back at the start, the idea was that nature didn't sit down to draw something funny. It sat down to draw something that works. And then, 3 miles below the surface, in absolute darkness, it drew an octopus with ears, and made it the smartest way to move. The funniest animal on Earth doesn't live on a continent at all. It lives below all of them. And it has been doing the cartoon impression of itself longer than continents have looked the way they do now. If you made it this far, I post new animal deep dives like this every week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.